The Yellow-Wind Sage is a formidable boss who's the last thing that you need to face before completing Chapter 2 in Black Myth Wukong, and he's definitely a step up from previous encounters, so buckle in because this one might be a little bit longer. Now before you challenge the Yellow-Wind Sage, I strongly advise that you take on some of the chapter's optional content to help you better prepare. Specifically, get a weapon upgrade and grab the Wind Tamer vessel, which you can use to counter many of the boss's wind abilities. Getting both of these should put you in a much better position when you do face off against the boss. Which, by the way, I've been enjoying covering the chapter bosses and side content for Black Myth Wukong, so do be sure to get subscribed and leave a like while you're down there if you want to see more Chapter 3 content. So first up, that weapon upgrade. Is it obtained by defeating Shigandong? To do his questline, you need to first defeat the Stone Vanguard, and then find a bunch of eyes to unseal him. These are all found on Buddha heads in his area. The staff itself has 60 attack and 20 defense, which A, is more damage than anything you're likely to have access to at this level, and B, provides the much needed defense, which you can use to take less damage from the boss. But for more on how to defeat Shigandong or complete his questline, then check out my dedicated video. On the other hand, you get the Wind Tamer vessel by fighting Fuban, a giant armored beetle whose armor renders him nearly impervious. Using the Wind Tamer vessel allows you to negate some of the Yellow-Wind Sage's abilities, preventing him from doing one of his transitions and using a lot of his deadly moves. So using this with the right time makes a portion of a fight much easier, especially if you use it towards the latter half. You obtain this by completing the Yellow-Robed Squire questline, which culminates in a fight against the Yaoguai King Fuban. But again, for more on that, do check out my dedicated video that I'll link up in the card and down below. Now last up, in terms of build or loadout, it's very much personal preference. Use whatever is most comfortable for you. But for me personally, I found I was having a hard time casting my spirit. I just get hit because the boss is extremely fast and aggressive. So I swapped to the Civet Sergeant. This way I have a passive attack bonus and don't have to worry about casting him quite as much. I also found that the extra range from going into thrust stance, rather than the smash stance that I'd been using to smash all the game previously, did end up helping, as the extra range of a heavy attack made it much easier to land when the boss jumped away. But now that you're prepared, let's get into some of the Yellow-Wind Sage's mechanics. First up, his basic attacks involve a lot of sweeping strikes, so it can be very tempting to dodge backwards, but in this case that is exactly the worst thing to do. You want to dodge to the side and continue dodging to avoid the strikes. This is because he often ends the combo by slamming his staff into the ground, causing an eruption of blades from the sand. If you're dodging backwards to avoid the previous strike, you will almost always get hit by this attack. So you dodge to the side, and then his slam almost always automatically misses you, which means you have a good opportunity for damage uptime on the boss. Now much like the Tiger Vanguard, the Yellow-Wind Sage is also very aggressive, which can make it difficult to finish a light attack combo. You'll very often need to dodge before the final strike. And to be honest with you, the penultimate attack in the sequence very often leaves you particularly vulnerable. So I found it's better to use a couple attacks, dodge, even if this means interrupting my combo, attack, maybe weave something in like a backstep from my thrust stance, and focus on chipping away the boss to build up my focus, then punish the Sage with either a charged heavy attack if I get a minute for breathing, or an empowered heavy using my focus points. Again though, you won't have very long to charge, so make sure you're nearly there before you start. Now, at 66 and 33% health, the boss phases. During this time, you enter a transition where he attacks you with sand mirages. Beware, these might be illusions, but they can do full damage. However, the attacks follow a very simple fixed sequence. The first one always attempts to impale you with sand spikes first, then goes into several sweeping strikes. After that, the second one will jump towards you, striking as it does, then jump back away from you, striking as it does. After that, the boss will return to the arena. Learn the sequence, and learn to dodge accordingly. You very much want to conserve your health, especially in the first third of a fight. Now, below 66% health, he gets faster and has new moves. First up, the grab. This one is really subtle. There's a slight change in his footwork before he executes the grab, but I'm going to be honest, 90+% of the time I fail to avoid this. So, below 66% health, there's a good chance that if you're not really closely paying attention to his feet, you will get grabbed. The best way to survive is just keeping your health topped off using your gourd. He also begins moving around the arena a lot more, which means attacking you with wind blades from a distance and using charge attacks. You can try to follow his motions using your dodge or using the sprint to prevent him from using quite as many of these long-range strikes, as they can be particularly challenging to dodge. I also found that in the second phase, he likes sometimes jumping into the winds outside the arena, which is a real pain. You can't do much about it, you just kind of have to hope he comes out to attack you. So your best bet is try to fight him in the center of a room as much as you are able. It's also at this point that he begins summoning mirages of Fuban, that gigantic beetle monster that I mentioned at the start of a video. Wait for it to get close to the ground, and dodge it right before it crashes into you. Now, at 33% health, the boss does another transition and begins covering the arena in sand tornadoes, further restricting the space. So I recommend using the wind vessel either for this stage of a fight or maybe slightly before to allow yourself some time to A, prevent him from doing most of his dangerous moves, and B, get in some good damage on the boss. Because he is most dangerous below 33% health, this is where I recommend that you spend most of your mana on damage spells to do as much as possible and keep this as short as you can. You really need to be careful here because the chip damage adds up, or you can just get straight out comboed. If you miss a grab, if you get bounced by a sand tornado, you're probably going to be dead, and that means moving on to another attempt. Remember that if you're going to use something like Pluck of Many that has a fairly long cast time, cast Immobilize first to freeze him in place, give yourself time to cast the spell without him interrupting you, because you really can't afford to lose the damage on this fight. Now, one small note about how I fought him, I ended up using the Stone Gua transformation. This is because when I was using the fire spell that I much prefer, I got hit too much, and it led to too many of my attacks getting interrupted. So I used the big tanky Stone Gua because I could eat all the damage in that form and just keep hitting the boss to get in a little bit of chip damage. I used it around the 66% mark because below 33% the boss just jumped away too much. Also, on my kill attempt, I do think I used the Wind Tamer Vessel just a little bit too early. I probably should have delayed it to right before that 33% transition, but I didn't want to miss it and have to deal with the sand mirages and the tornadoes and all that nonsense. And hey, I ended up having enough damage that it worked out in the long run anyway. And so, here's my fight against the Yellow Wind Sage, applying all the things that I've talked about so far in this video.
A skinny wretch like you has come far enough!
And so that's it for the Yellow Wind Sage, the final boss of Chapter 2. He is much more aggressive than everything before, and honestly I struggled to complete combos without getting hit, so don't get discouraged if this takes you a few attempts, or even a few hours. Personally, I struggled really hard on him, it almost felt impossible, but then I went and I got the Wind Tamer Vessel, I got my staff upgrade, and I swapped to Thrust Stance, and I was able to prevail in just a few attempts. Which I'll chalk up partially to the upgrades and also partially to the over an hour of practice that I already had on the fight. And now with all that said, I'm curious, what is your favorite stance so far in Black Myth Wukong, and why is it Smash or Thrust? Okay, I know some people probably like Pillar, but so far that one's felt like a meme for me. Initially, I started out really liking Smash stance, but as time has gone on, I've very much taken a liking to Thrust stance. The extra range is just really nice. And as one last quick reminder, check out the videos up in the card down below to learn more about the side content that you can do to power up before this boss. Now, before I go, I'd like to take a minute to thank my patrons and channel members for their continued support. For as low as $1 a month, you can help make videos just like this one possible. Link to support is down below. And also, a big thanks to everyone who watched to the end of the video. I'm glad you enjoyed, and I'm sorry if you ended up getting sand in uncomfortable places as a side effect of seeing so much of it on screen. Because, oh boy, there was so much sand. But hey, at least the Unreal Engine 5 physics sims did look pretty sweet. And so for now, I'll give you some time to dust off before seeing you again in the future with some chilly bosses from Chapter 3.